Before GPS, before automation, before machines became smart, scrapers were built to be unstoppable. These 1970s giants didn't ask for perfect ground or gentle operators. They carved mountains, reshaped deserts, and moved more earth in a day than some modern fleets can manage in a week. Crews today still stop and stare when one of these monsters shows up on a job site, not out of nostalgia, but out of respect, because these machines weren't designed to cooperate with the land, they were designed to dominate it. These are 10 scrapers from the 1970s that modern crews still respect. Number 1. Caterpillar 621B. The Caterpillar 621B was the kind of scraper that made entire fleets possible. Introduced in an era when contractors were expanding into massive cut-and-fill projects, the 621B became the definition of reliable production. Twin engines, a well-sized bowl, and a layout that just made sense turned it into one of the most trusted machines of its time. What made the 621B special was balance. It wasn't the biggest scraper Cat ever built, but it didn't need to be. It could load efficiently, haul confidently, and dump cleanly. On long highway jobs, a fleet of 621Bs could move dirt with metronomic consistency. Foremen loved them because they made planning easier. Operators loved them because they responded honestly to input. Mechanics loved them because they could be kept alive without a laboratory. In the cut, the 621B had a personality operators still talk about. It would dig in hard without immediately breaking traction. You could feel the load building. That feedback mattered. A good operator could ride the edge of traction, filling the bowl quickly without wasting power. The machine taught you how to work efficiently. Mechanically, the 621B was from an era when serviceability was part of the design brief. Components were robust, access was logical, and systems were understandable. When something went wrong, crews could usually diagnose it with experience and common sense, not a laptop. Modern crews still respect the 621B because it represents a perfect middle ground. Big enough to matter, simple enough to trust, strong enough to run all day. It didn't chase innovation for its own sake, it chased yards per hour, and it delivered. Number 2. Caterpillar 631C. If the 621B was the backbone of medium to large projects, the Caterpillar 631C was what showed up when the job turned serious. This machine lived on massive earth-moving sites, projects where millions of cubic yards had to disappear on unforgiving schedules. The 631C wasn't subtle. It was a heavy production scraper designed to move big volumes with authority. When one rolled onto a job site, expectations changed. Cycle times mattered more. Haul roads had to be better. Pusher coordination had to be sharper. The machine demanded a higher level of professionalism from everyone around it. Operators respected the 631C because it rewarded skill. Load it right, and it felt unstoppable. Abuse it, and it reminded you that mass and power deserved discipline. The controls were direct, the response immediate. There was no buffer between the operator and the ground. Every mistake was educational. What modern crews admire most is how these machines held up under pressure. Long hauls, rough terrain, dust, heat, rain. The 631C was built for that world. Frames were thick, drivelines were stout, hydraulics were designed to work, not impress. In today's environment, where machines are packed with sensors and automation, the 631C stands as a reminder that raw mechanical integrity still matters. Crews respect it because it didn't need excuses. It showed up, pulled hard, and moved dirt like it was born to do nothing else. Number 3. Caterpillar 637. The Caterpillar 637D earned its reputation as the scraper you used when you wanted more. More material per pass, more authority in the cut, more confidence on long hauls. It was a machine that didn't apologize for being aggressive. In the 1970s, projects were expanding in scale. Contractors needed machines that could move massive volumes without becoming fragile. The 637D answered that call. It was heavy, powerful, and unapologetically industrial. Operators remember the 637D for its presence. You didn't casually run one, you respected it. It demanded attention. In return, it delivered production numbers that smaller machines simply couldn't match. On well-managed jobs, a fleet of 637Ds could reshape landscapes, What modern crews still admire is the machine's honesty. There was no illusion of gentleness. If you overloaded, you felt it immediately. If the haul road deteriorated, the machine told you. It forced job sites to stay disciplined. Good roads meant good production. Bad roads meant wasted power. Mechanics remember the 637D as a machine that rewarded care, maintain it properly, and it would keep working through conditions that would cripple lighter equipment. Ignore it, and it would remind you that heavy iron demands respect. In a world where machines are often judged by features, the 637D is respected for its character. It wasn't designed to impress in a showroom. It was designed to dominate dirt. Number 4. Caterpillar 651B. The Caterpillar 651B wasn't just a scraper, it was a system builder. In the 1970s, when contractors began taking on truly massive earth-moving projects, the 651B became the machine that defined what large-scale really meant. This was the scraper you chose when the job wasn't measured in thousands of yards, but in millions. Highways, dams, industrial complexes. If the project needed an army of iron, the 651B often led the charge. What made the 651B legendary was not only its size, but the way it forced everyone on the job to evolve. Running a 651B effectively meant planning. Pushes had to be coordinated. Haul roads had to be maintained like highways. Turnarounds had to be clean and wide. Every inefficiency showed up immediately in cycle time. The machine didn't allow sloppy operations to hide. Operators respected the 651B because it demanded real skill. You didn't get by in this machine. You either learned to manage load, throttle, and traction properly, or you wasted fuel and time. When run correctly, the scraper felt unstoppable. The bowl filled with authority, the haul felt confident, and the dump cycle was smooth and decisive. That rhythm became addictive. Veterans still talk about the satisfaction of running a 651B in a well-organized fleet, where every pass felt like part of a giant machine made of people and iron. Mechanics respected the 651B for its brutal honesty. It was big, heavy, and unapologetically industrial. Components were sized for punishment. Frames didn't flex under stress. Systems were designed to be worked on in the field. It wasn't easy equipment, but it was fair. If you maintained it, it stayed loyal. Modern crews still respect the 651B because it represents a mindset that hasn't changed. Production is built, not wished into existence. Even today, with GPS and automation, large earth-moving jobs still live or die by planning, discipline, and reliable iron. The 651B reminds crews that technology can help, but only fundamentals move dirt. Number 5. John Deere 760A. The John Deere 760A came from a time when Caterpillar dominated the scraper world. For Deere, breaking into that territory meant one thing: the machine had to prove itself the hard way. No contractor was going to gamble millions of dollars on a scraper that couldn't hang with the best. The 760A earned its reputation by doing exactly that, showing up on real jobs and surviving. What modern crews respect about the 760A is that it didn't try to be flashy. It focused on being usable. Operators often describe Deere scrapers as contractor-friendly. Controls felt logical. Power delivery felt predictable. The machine didn't fight you. That mattered on long shifts, when fatigue turned small annoyances into big problems. In the cut, the 760A behaved with a kind of mechanical honesty that old-school operators appreciate. It didn't mask mistakes. If you overloaded, you knew it. If the ground got tough, you felt it. That feedback made better operators. Crews who ran these machines learned how to read dirt, manage traction, and keep cycles tight without abusing the iron. Mechanics came to respect the 760A because it could be lived with. Access was reasonable. Systems were understandable. You didn't need a factory technician to solve every issue. On remote projects, that was priceless. A machine that can be kept running by the crew itself becomes more than equipment. It becomes a partner. The 7060A is respected today because it proved that heavy earth-moving wasn't owned by one brand. It showed that with solid engineering and real-world durability, a challenger could earn trust. In an industry built on risk, any machine that reduces uncertainty earns permanent respect. Number 6. Euclid TS-24. Euclid equipment came from a world that didn't care about comfort or appearance. Mining environments are unforgiving, abrasive material, brutal loads, endless cycles, and zero patience for failure. The TS-24 scraper carried that DNA. It was designed to live where weaker machines broke. Operators who ran TS-24 scrapers remember their raw toughness. These machines felt industrial in the purest sense. Everything about them suggested endurance. Thick steel, heavy driveline components, and a sense that the machine expected to be punished. That gave operators confidence. You could push hard without feeling like you were gambling with the machine's life. The TS-24 didn't charm crews, it impressed them. It earned respect through survival. On jobs with sharp rock, long hauls, and harsh climates, Euclid scrapers kept moving. They didn't pretend conditions were better than they were. They just worked. Mechanics respected Euclid iron because it was built with an understanding of reality, where parts were meant to be replaced. Systems were designed to tolerate dirt and vibration. It wasn't delicate, it was honest. In remote operations, that honesty mattered more than any brochure promise. Modern crews respect the TS-24 because it represents equipment built for worst-case scenarios. Even today, contractors face jobs where conditions defeat optimized designs. In those moments, the Euclid philosophy, build it heavy, build it simple, build it to survive, still feels right. The TS-24 stands as proof that endurance is a feature. Number 7. International Harvester 412. International Harvester scrapers never had the fame of CAT or the mystique of Euclid, but the 412 carved out a reputation the hard way. Contractors who bought IH machines often did so because they valued toughness and straightforward engineering over marketing dominance. The 412 became a symbol of that mindset. What crews respected about the 412 was its work ethic. It didn't promise miracles, it delivered steady, dependable production. On smaller cut-and-fill projects and regional highway jobs, these machines became trusted tools. They started in the morning, they ran all day. They didn't turn every minor issue into a crisis. Operators often described the 412 as honest. The machine behaved predictably. Controls responded the way you expected. There was no mystery in how it worked. That predictability reduced fatigue and increased confidence, especially for operators who valued feel over finesse. Mechanics grew to appreciate IH designs because they were practical. Components made sense. Systems could be understood without factory specialists. In smaller fleets, where resources were limited, that practicality kept projects alive. Modern crews respect the 412 because it represents a truth that still matters. Not every job needs the most famous machine. Sometimes the best equipment is the one that quietly does its work without drama. In an industry obsessed with numbers, the 412 reminds us that reliability is production. Number 8. Terex TS-14. The Terex TS-14 was never the biggest scraper on the job, but it might have been one of the most aggressive. In the 1970s, many contractors needed a machine that could work in tighter sites, urban expansions, industrial pads, short-haul cut-and-fill jobs without sacrificing real production. The TS-14 became that weapon. What modern crews still respect about the TS-14 is its attitude. This machine was compact, but it was built with the same industrial mindset as Terex's larger iron. Thick frames, muscular driveline components, and a powertrain that felt eager to work gave it a reputation as a fighter. Operators learned quickly that it could be pushed hard without folding. In the cut, the TS-14 felt sharp. It bit cleanly, filled efficiently, and accelerated with confidence. On short-haul roads where cycle speed mattered more than raw bowl size, it could embarrass larger machines. That made it popular on projects where layout and space limited bigger scrapers. It proved that production wasn't only about size, it was about how well a machine fit the job. Operators respected the TS-14 because it felt alive. The feedback through the controls was immediate. You knew what the dirt was doing. You knew how close you were to the limit. That kind of connection turns a scraper into a tool instead of a mystery box. Mechanics appreciated Terex's heavy-handed engineering. The TS-14 wasn't delicate. It tolerated vibration, heat, and dust without becoming fragile. For regional contractors who didn't have dealer support on every corner, that resilience mattered. You could keep these machines alive with discipline and common sense. Modern crews respect the TS-14 because it represents efficiency through toughness. It wasn't built to impress, it was built to grind. Even today on compact earth-moving jobs, that philosophy still wins. Number 9. Wabco 333 FT. The Wabco 333 FT came from a lineage rooted in heavy haul and industrial earthmoving. In the 1970s, Wabco scrapers were known for one thing above all else: endurance. These machines were designed for jobs where haul roads stretched long and conditions stayed ugly for months. What made the 333 FT special was its ability to maintain production over distance. It wasn't just about power, it was about composure. The machine felt stable at speed. It tracked well on rough haul roads. It didn't feel nervous under load. On big civil projects, that steadiness translated directly into consistent cycle times. Operators respected the 333 FT because it reduced stress. Long hauls are exhausting. A machine that feels predictable, balanced, and confident becomes easier to live in for 12 hours. The Wabco didn't fight its operator. It let them settle into a rhythm. Mechanics respected it for its industrial construction. Wabco machines were built like they expected abuse. Frames were heavy. Drivetrain components were chosen for longevity. Systems were designed to keep working even when conditions were less than ideal. That meant fewer catastrophic failures and more scheduled maintenance instead of emergency triage. Modern crews respect the 333 FT because it reflects a forgotten priority: longevity under constant load. In an era where equipment is often optimized for efficiency on paper, the Wabco reminds us that staying alive is a form of efficiency. A machine that runs every day moves more dirt than one that is brilliant but fragile. Number 10. Allis-Chalmers 645. Allis-Chalmers equipment from the 1970s carried a certain personality: stubborn, heavy, and unapologetically mechanical. The 645 scraper embodied that spirit. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't famous, but it was built to endure. What crews respected about the 645 was its refusal to die. These machines worked through decades of changing standards, ownership, and job types. They moved dirt in an era before computers and kept moving dirt long after computers arrived. Operators liked the 645 because it felt solid. The machine had weight, presence, and feedback. It didn't float over mistakes. It taught lessons. You learned how to cut properly. You learned how to manage traction. You learned how to respect momentum. Those lessons carried forward into every other machine. Mechanics often became fans of Allis-Chalmers iron because of how it was put together. Systems made sense. Parts were rugged. Repairs felt fair. You didn't feel like the machine was designed to defeat you. Modern crews respect the 645 because it proves a simple truth: dirt hasn't changed. Gravity hasn't changed. Physics hasn't changed. A machine that could handle those realities in 1974 can still earn respect today. These scrapers are not relics. They are benchmarks, reminders that true respect in construction is earned one load at a time. These scrapers didn't just move dirt, they moved history. Highways, dams, cities, entire landscapes were born behind their steel bowls. They were loud, brutal, inefficient by today's standards, yet unbeatable. Modern machines are smarter, cleaner, and more precise, but none of them carry this kind of authority. These giants earned respect the hard way, by never quitting. So tell me, if one of these legends rolled onto your job site tomorrow, which one would you trust first? Drop it in the comments. And if you respect real iron and machines that shaped the world, subscribe, because legends like these deserve to keep moving.